for the finale, I had to drip a little bit. If you don't like that, get your money up, not your funny up. Well, I can't talk because these chains fake. Allegedly. Anyway, what's up, YouTube? Zion back, and this is the finale for the Level Up series, and today we'll be talking about closing on your first rental property deal. Now, of course, before you even get into closing on the deal, you have to analyze that you have made the right decision on your real estate deal. So we'll walk through the steps of analyzing, but also executing and closing to get in your first. So first and foremost, thank you for all the support. Make sure you like, share, comment, subscribe, and because this will be the last installment of this series, go ahead and leave in the comment section what I could have done better, what questions you wanted answered that I didn't answer, a concept that I wasn't clear enough on, where you're still confused. What exactly do you think is holding you back right now from getting your first rental property? So even go ahead and leave that in the comments as well. So we'll get right into it. But yes, I thank you for all the support, like I said, and we'll dive right in. So let me just go ahead and reiterate what this series has been about this far. So this whole series, this Level Up series, is or has been about clearing up a lot of the confusion, the most common questions people have when it comes to real estate in general, but especially investing in real estate. So this has been a series for people who have been thinking about getting into it, have considered it, or they're at certain points in the process in which have become unclear. So I've been, explaining definitions and giving examples, analogies, or whatever to make the process a little clearer than what it previously was for the average person. So everything we've talked about, from the mindset you have to have, the certain financial behaviors you have to partake in or you have to display in order to be in the right position to buy your first property, to building your team, to understanding the market, have all led up to this point right here, which is closing on your first real estate deal. Now, for this video, I'll break it down into two parts. The first part will go over analyzing a deal, analyzing a good and bad real estate deal. The second part will be closing, how you're supposed to close on the deal. And then kind of like an additional part, so I guess you can say it's three parts. An additional part will be examples I'll give you of a good deal and a bad deal. And really, the good and bad deals are deals that I've done. So I'll be able to specifically show you how everything went down. So for the analysis part, there have already been certain things we've touched on previously. And by the way, if you haven't checked in on the other videos leading up to this point, go ahead and go back. Because like I said, everything leads up to analyzing for your deal. But a lot of things we've already touched on, so I don't want to, just go over the same concepts again and again and again. But there will be things that you've heard, and if I do go over them again, it's because you need them. In regards to analyzing the deal, you want to remember 5 questions. Number 1, does the property cash flow? Number 2, what is the true purchase cost of the property? Number 3, what are the market rents actually? Number 4, something we haven't really talked about is what is your exit strategy? And number 5, what is your margin for safety? Now, like I said, so many things we've already talked about, like cash flow. So when it comes to cash flow, just to run through it really quick, you want to take into account the rent you'll be getting potentially compared to the mortgage, taxes, insurance, vacancy, and maintenance costs. How much will all that cost you? And you want to take all of those expenses into account, subtract the rent that you'll get from the expenses, and whatever is left over will be your cash flow. Now, generally speaking, if the rents don't work, it's most likely a bad deal. Most likely. Now, there are certain areas, I'll get into it later, but there are certain times where you can have the option to refinance, and though initially the rents didn't work, through refinancing you're able to make the rents work in your favor. So, but generally speaking, I want to keep it general for right now. The question is, does the property cash flow? Whenever you run the numbers initially, you want to see if it cash flows, and if it does not, you might want to pass on the deal. Now, like I said, the second question is, what is the true purchase cost? The true purchase cost. Usually people make the mistake, and I have absolutely made this mistake. You think that what's listed as the purchase price will be the purchase cost, but what you're not taking into account is all the hidden things that you have to pay for along the way. Things such as closing costs, repairs, holding costs. These are attached to what the purchase price will be in the end. So if I buy a house for what is listed for $250,000, but I don't take into account the $10,000 closing costs. If I don't take into account the repairs I will have to make, let's say that's $5,000. So that's $10,000 and $5,000. That's $15,000 on top of the $250,000. Also taking into account the utilities I'll have to pay if there's a vacancy. So let's say that's around $2,000. So let's say, so with the $250,000 purchase price that's listed on Zillow or wherever you look at the market through, whatever website, you start with your $250,000. You have $10,000 in closing costs. You have $5,000 in repairs, and then you also have $2,000 in the utilities while the unit is vacant. So that's an additional $17,000 that you have on top of the $250,000. That's $260,000 that you have to think is actually going to be the purchase cost. So the price sticker lies. The total cost tells the truth in regards to what you'll actually have to pay in the end. The third question, what are the market rents? So in the last video, when I talked about understanding the market, I spoke on different websites you use in order to evaluate what are the market rents for the area in which you're going to buy in. So you're using things like Zillow, Renometer, Redfin, and whatever other website you would like to use. These are the resources you use in order to figure out what are you going to be charging out. So you're looking at properties similar to the ones that you're going to buy in that area. So if I'm looking to buy a triplex in a specific area, I want to know what the other triplexes in the vicinity are renting for. And any other nearby units, I want to see what are the comps, so I know what I'm getting into, what I should be looking forward to rent out my property for. Now, the fourth question you want to ask yourself when analyzing a real estate property deal is, what exactly is my exit strategy? And get specific. What are you looking to do? Now, most people will buy a property and they want to hold it for a long period of time, but there's also other options. You can buy and hold for a long period of time, but you can also buy and hold for, let's say, 5 years. You can refinance, then you can sell. Some people want to buy, flip, then sell, or some people want to buy and then whenever the market jumps or falls, they want to refinance. It's so many different things you can do in order to take advantage of certain opportunities that may present themselves. So get specific on your exit strategy. Like for me personally, whenever I buy a property, I'm really looking to hold it for, to be honest with you, the length of the mortgage, unless something happens that's out of the ordinary where I may have to consider something different. I really look to buy and hold for a long period of time. And if I need to refinance, then I will. And most of the time, refinancing is a great option. So that's why, you know, you go back to a couple of videos ago, whenever I spoke about credit and always keeping that at a certain level, 700 plus to really be in good standing. But whenever you're in the 700 range and above, refinancing and different things like that, not just buying the properties, but refinancing is you're in a better position to get those deals done because you're trusted. And real quick, just for an example, and I'll get into this a little deeper later. My first property, you can almost say I overpaid for it. And then my mortgage payment actually ended up being extremely high. Now I had a high paying job, that being a merchant seaman working on the boat. So I was able to float the mortgage payments every month, no question, to be honest with you. But the point is, I didn't intend for my mortgage payments to be that high for so long. So what was my exit strategy? Well, consider that my first property was a triplex. So we have 3 units in which we were bringing around $3,000 of rent in every month out of the 2 units that were rented out. Now, I lived in the 3rd unit. So basically, if you want to be frank, I'm actually losing money monthly, like around $700 a month. But when it comes to my exit strategy is to move out of the unit I'm in, which is a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom. Rent this one out for the same amount of rent that the other 1-bedroom and 1-bathroom I'll rent out, which is around $950. Now I make profit off my investment. So though I was losing money for a while, I have an exit strategy in which I can profit and I can benefit in the long run, but I just had to be patient. So that's where in real estate, you have to stay focused on what exactly you're planning to do. Not just to get the deal done and not just to maintain throughout, but also whenever you're looking to get out of a deal, can you still benefit? So next question to ask, which concludes the 5 questions for analyzing the deal, is this: what is my margin for safety? If I'm going to purchase a $200,000 property and I'm going to have to put down 20%, just call it 20% for an investment property, that's $40,000 down payment. Don't think $40,000 is the only thing you have to save up, because obviously, like I already brought up closing costs and things of that nature, so the true purchase cost. But let's think about bad tenants, for example. You have to make sure you're leaving room for, of course, the repairs, the maintenance, and the increases in rates yearly or whatever the case may be, but bad tenants as well. So one thing about bad tenants is this, and I have to say this because a lot of people are absolutely out of their mind, and you know, they should be somewhere. They probably shouldn't be in like an apartment or anything. It should be in an asylum or some type of, maybe a zoo, because some people are animals. So it's kind of like we have to be cognizant that we may come across the craziest people in our lives that we're housing. So these people may spaz, completely lose their mind, want to tear up your property. It's happened to me. So I can, and I'll show clips, I'll show pictures, but we have to make sure that we understand that anything can happen with these people. And if we're not planning the right way to deal with the craziest of people, we could be in a bad position quickly. So be smart, always leave room for cash reserves, always leave room for repairs, like I've spoken about. But like I said, if I repeat anything, it's because you need to hear it. So don't get mad, get right. So yes, keep that in mind. Always leave room, always have reserves, always have something that you'll be able to throw at certain issues as soon as they come up. So as I wrap up the first part of this video and closing the real estate deal, when it comes to the analysis of the deal, just remember the 5 questions like this. Your cash flow will pay you. Your real rent will save you. Your true cost will protect you. Your exit strategy will free you. And your margin of safety will keep you alive in the deal. So remember that, because once the deal makes sense on paper, now you have to move into execution. So remember those 5 questions you asked, and it should make things a lot simpler for you going into the closing table. So now we obviously have to get to the main event, which is closing the actual deal, closing the deal. So one way to contrast the 2 sections of this video, analyzing and actually executing or closing on the deal, is analyzing the deal uses your brain, while closing the deal uses your discipline. So if you go back to my previous videos, I spoke on discipline, and that's always going to be a huge part in, well, really everything in life. But when it comes to this, your discipline is key. Now, so for the first step of the closing process is the offer. The offer is basically where you protect your future. It's not about being aggressive. You know, in movies, you know, you may hear these standoff negotiations with whoever it may be, and it's, you know, you hear certain things where it's like, oh, you have to be aggressive, and you have to be stern, and you have to be like, nobody cares about how aggressive you're being, and none of that. You always want to be smart. Being intelligent is the key proponent to a lot of this. Starting with your mindset getting into it, but also just throughout, making sure you're making the best decisions. So whenever you're looking at the offer, one thing or a couple of things we're taking into account: the purchase price, the inspection window, the financing contingency, the earnest money deposit that we'll have to put down to show that we're serious, and also the closing date that is decided on most likely by the agents. So safety, what I just spoke about, your margin of safety. Safety is being introduced into the deal right here, right? Whenever you think about the inspection windows, and even with the earnest money, that's safety on the seller's part, because they want to make sure that they're dealing with somebody who's serious. So whenever you're offering to the seller, whatever your price may be, whatever you're looking to purchase the property at, you can explain to them the comps, right? You can explain to them the repair credits or any other contingencies you may have that may lead you to most likely offering less. Because me and my agent, there's never been a time where we've offered asking price, always offer below, respectfully. So you do that because you see what's around, that property, and you make an educated offer. That's the only thing you can do. So remember, I said discipline and intelligence are key components to this whole process, but especially in this case where You have to be disciplined in order to adhere to all of these facts and go down the list to make sure that you're being intelligent enough to offer a reasonable and not disrespectful price to the seller and their client. Because sometimes, it, like, say you're in a position where, you know, let's say $250,000 for a property that's been on the market for 3 days, right? It just got on the market 3 days ago, listed at $250,000. Let's say you want to be cheap, and you kind of, I don't know if you want to be funny or whatever you may be going through, but you offer $150,000. Now, there's really no world in which a $100,000 decrease from the purchase price will be accepted by a seller or their client. And unless you have done your research, you were disciplined enough to do your research, there's no reason for you to offer something $100,000 lower than the purchase price. So you see how that's unreasonable. Make a reasonable offer it. Let their answer be whatever it may be, because oftentimes the offer is where the deal is either won or lost. Now, following that, we have to get into the inspection period. Think about your inspection period as the last chance to walk away cleanly from a deal. The electrical, the HVAC systems, the plumbing, and the roof. Have all that done. Make sure it's complete. Make sure it's complete. There's nothing that they missed. Because this is great for insurance as well. The insurance company will need this. So, and if you don't know what to look for in regards to it being complete, trust me, your insurance agent, which is a key part to your real estate team, like I spoke on videos ago, they'll let you know exactly what they need to see in order to bind that insurance to your property. So whenever the inspectors check, they get done with their inspection, their 4-point, you read the report. You can now renegotiate, because now you understand what's really going on with the property. You're not just looking at it from the inside. Now you know the whole x-ray. So now you can go back to the seller and say, if you could consider repairing this, repairing that, then we still have a deal. If they're not looking to repair what you want them to repair to save your money, I mean, you can either bite the bullet. If it's a good enough deal, you can either bite the bullet and pay it for yourself, or you can go ahead and cancel because you're within that inspection period window. So remember, whenever you're in that time period, you're not stuck. Yes, your agent will have you sign certain contracts, but that's just an agreement to, if everything is correct, you will proceed with the process, but that's not to lock you in and trap you into something you potentially might want to get out of. So it's your choice. You either negotiate or you overpay. And I've never been somebody to like overpaying for anything. So whatever I can do to not overpay, I'm not gonna be cheap, but whatever I can do to not overpay, I'll do it. Now, really quick, we'll talk about earnest money, your earnest money deposit that the seller and their client will require of you to show that you're serious. Now, you look at earnest money deposit as having skin in the game. And usually the earnest money deposit is not anything insane. It's usually, from what I've seen, from what I've had to give towards the seller, is 1% of the purchase price. So if there's a $200,000 property, 1% of that is $2,000. They'll probably ask for that from you. Like I said, just to show you're serious. Now, sometimes they may increase it just to really show how serious you are. And if you really, truly expect that this is a good deal, then you'll put a little more on to that deposit. So this money shows that you're serious, but you're ultimately not stuck. You're not stuck as long as you're in the inspection period. When there's a window, I think there was 10 days for us in which we had to inspect the property that we were looking to buy. And then if, say, we were to step away because of, and this happened to us before, there was a property downtown where I live at that I was looking at, and after the inspection came back, there was just too much for me that I would have to repair. And obviously I'll be the one funding the whole repair project, and I wasn't up for it. So you step away, you get your earnest money back, and you move on. You move on to the next deal. So now we have to talk about financing and the appraisal. So real quick, a property appraisal is when the lender will send a licensed expert out to inspect the home's interior and exterior, and through looking at other comps, kind of like what you end up doing whenever you're analyzing the market, through looking at comps and other nearby sales and things of that nature, they will form an unbiased opinion on the value of the property. So the bank will confirm the value of the property, and that's whenever you get into following that, you get into the underwriting, where they check your income, they check your credit, and they check your debt to income ratio, which we've already went over. But that's why those things are so important early on, getting those in order correctly, because when it gets to the point when they're actually looking at it, you already know you're in good standing. So the appraisal, there's nothing that you really have to do, but that's just the steps that the lender and the bank, they're taking to make sure everything is good in their field. You see that through discipline, through focus, through intelligence, these things can be made a lot simpler than we ever thought anything can be made. And that's why those three things we have to hone in on, because if all of those three things are aligned, anything can be accomplished. But if one of the three things are slacking, things become harder. So the whole point of this is to make things easier, to make things, even if it's just a little easier, we can accomplish living a better life. So with our second to last step in the closing process, we have our final walkthrough. Now I made a short not too long ago where I spoke on, after you buy the property, going to the property, scoping out the scene day and night, seeing seeing the traffic, if any, seeing what the environment really is like. And that's after you buy the property. But your final walkthrough is, because that's having to do more with the exterior. When it comes to the interior, your final walkthrough is just like that. You want to make sure nothing from whenever you first seen it has changed up until this point. And you want to make sure, if you negotiated repairs being done, make sure those are done. If there were, which I'm sure there were, appliances there, make sure they're still there. There's no damage anywhere, no flooding, anything like that. That's what you're looking for the final walkthrough. You want to make sure that the property you looked at when you first seen it and you saw the inside, everything is still correct. Now, finally, last and certainly not least, you're at the closing table. Now, closing day is ironically the most boring part, which is actually good. If closing day is boring, it's amazing, because that means that everything went right. You did exactly what you were supposed to do. You did exactly what I told you to do in these videos. You watched out for everything you need to watch out for. You done everything right. Your credit was great. Your money was great. DTI was great. You're great. Everything was A1. And now you move to closing. All you have to do is sign the paperwork. It's like 1 billion papers to sign. So be ready for that, because yeah, your hand will be tired after it, but it's all worth it. Sign a bunch of paperwork. You wire the down payment money, then you get the keys. And that's basically how closing day goes. There's really nothing more to it. Then after that, you get into the deeper things post purchase. And you know, the closing process is to protect you. So we're making sure we're staying safe, smart, sufficient, and you know, this process helps that. So whenever you're throughout this whole thing, but whenever you're closing and you're just, the days are passing by where it's getting closer and closer to that day, make sure you're not rushing the inspection. Make sure you're not skipping any documents on closing day. Make sure you don't trust the word of the seller. Make sure you don't ignore the numbers. Make sure you don't fall in love with any house, but fall in love with the opportunity to profit off of those houses and ultimately live a better life. You know, don't let your emotions get so caught up in the uncertainty of the market, uncertainty of the real estate dealings, whatever that may, however that may play on your mind. Don't let it get to you, because ultimately real estate itself is not risky, but being unprepared is. So preparation, right? This whole thing is about preparation. Preparation will alleviate so much pressure that you feel throughout. And that's why it's essential to have the right mind. It's essential to have the right team. It's essential to have the right focus. So hone in on what you have to and do what you have to in order to succeed. So we've been through so much information, so much knowledge over these 4 videos, and I hope that you're right on your way to at least taking one of the steps to investing in your first property. Now, one thing I can guarantee you, just about guarantee you, maybe it's different for some people out there, and they might be, I don't know, they might be superhuman or whatever, but your first property is most likely not going to make you a wealthy person, but it will set us on that path. So we have to make sure that our first can become our second become our third, and we can continue to scale until we become free. So before I wrap everything up, I just want to give 2 examples of a good real estate deal as opposed to a bad real estate deal. Now, whenever I say a bad real estate deal, it's not necessarily saying that I made a bad decision. I'm just saying, on, you know, in general, when you look at the numbers and you get into it, it looks like I made a bad deal. But I will explain why it's not so bad, and I will tie in what I just was speaking about, how important it is to have something like an exit strategy and a strategy in general. So first example, my first property purchased for $375,000, FHA loan, 3.5% down. So that's a $13,000 down payment. Now, because of, and I didn't speak on this and I should have, because of the FHA loan, that being the 3.5%, and also with I think I also used down payment assistance as well. my PMI. Your PMI is your premium mortgage insurance, and it's an additional couple hundreds of dollars for me that I have to pay every month on top of the original mortgage payment. So my mortgage payment was, upward of $3,500 a month. So, and that's including the PMI. So rent, I was only getting $2,800 a month. So basically, I'm losing money. I'm losing $700 a month I'm basically paying to own it. I'm paying to own. And real quick, just so you know, this is an owner-occupied loan. FHA is an owner-occupied loan. So I'm living in one of the units of my triplex while renting out the other two units that was bringing me in $2,800 a month. So basically, you can look at that as a loss, but this is the reason why I say on the surface, it looks like a bad deal, because the rents are not covering the mortgage and I'm not profiting at all. So they don't exceed the mortgage. What's my exit strategy? Move out of the unit that I'm in. I really have two options. And this is how you remain flexible. I can either move out of the property that I'm in literally right now, rent this out for however much I rented out the other property that's identical to mine, which is a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, and end up profiting off of that after I move out. Or I can refinance, get my mortgage payment down, stay here, and then profit. See, so having that exit strategy, it gives you options. It gives you options like, okay, if this were to work in this way, I can do this. Or if it doesn't work that way, I can just do that. So at this point, if I can't refinance, I'll just move out and rent this unit out. Or if I had no problem staying here for another year, because that's the requirement. After you close on a financing plan with the bank, you have to stay in the property for at least a year. So if I were to refinance today, I would have to wait until December of 2026 for me to move out and do whatever else I want to do to rent this out. That's if I refinance. So like I said, that's the power of the exit strategy. But think about the numbers I just gave you, where it's almost like I'm still at a loss. Though I have this asset, I'm still at a loss. But you're really not, and that's why you have to see it through. Now, the second example is a good real estate deal. Now, the reason this is good really is because the down payment was a lot larger than my first property. My first property being FHA, owner-occupied loan, 3.5% down, means that the mortgage payment per month is going to be higher. But because I had to put 20% down on this second property, which was an investment property that I did not look to live in, now that mortgage payment comes down a significant amount. So I bought that second property for upwards of $220,000. I put 20% down. Now you're looking at $50,000 plus that I had to put down for that property, plus all the repairs and that whole thing. So when I put all that, when you consider all that, my mortgage payment was only $1,500. Now in that area, being downtown, I was able to. It's another triplex, so I was able to rent out based on the comps, $800 on average for 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom in that area. So all in all, I think we get around $2,300 a month in rent. So $1,500 mortgage, $2,300 in rent. That's an $800 difference. Now, of course, because of my property manager, I pay him. So I'm looking at around $650, $700 a month, which is obviously a good deal. So remember, one of the first points I made was if the rents don't work, it's usually a bad deal, unless you're able to be creative enough to create a exit strategy to where you can make it a good deal. So all in all, that has been I think a pretty informational, educational series, if I do say so myself. Now let me know what else there is for me to speak about, whatever else you were still confused about. Like I said in the beginning, what are you still confused about? What's still holding you back from taking that first step, at the very least, of investing in yourself first, but investing in real estate more specifically? And I can dive deep into whatever I need to in order to make things easier for yourself. So let's remember to stay disciplined, stay focused, continue to prepare, and let's be brave enough to embrace this process. But to get something clear, bravery is not what this is about. That's not the sole purpose. You need it, but that's not the sole purpose of this. You want to be clear. Clarity is key. And whenever the numbers are right, whenever the process is clean, that's when fear and confusion disappear. So I appreciate every single person that has watched this video. I thank you for all the support. Like, share, comment, subscribe. That is the finale of the Level Up series. Win at all costs. Thank you so much for everything.